Welcome in to the second episode of Season 9 of Maroon Bold. I'm your sports editor, Austin Chastain, alongside, well, I say it every time, but alongside in the Zoom call with staff reporter Christian Boer. Christian, how are things going, man?
Not too bad. Obviously, still not ideal conditions in the world today and society. There's just a lot going on, and it's hard to kind of divvy up, where the attention needs to be because you got academics, you've got some semblance of athletics, not a whole lot going on in that world. And then you have all these social issues that need attention too. So it's kind of a complicated time nowadays, but, like I always say, you got to keep doing only what you can do and control only what you can control. So it's kind of important to really narrow the focus down to the things that are important to me.
Some semblance of athletics news. Rachel Blunt named just here on Thursday, she was named the interim athletic director, taking over for Michael Alford. He obviously found the news hit on that and got that out to people Thursday morning. So, what is there to maybe know about Rachel Blunt and kind of what she's looking to do?
Well, she does a lot for the student athletes around here. She has a lot of different roles. She works with compliance. She leads a lot of the different programs within the athletic department. So I think this is a really, really good hire for them and on an interim basis. And I think that this is also a person where if you go out and you take a look at 5 or 6, 7, maybe 8 or 9 candidates and you don't find somebody that you think fits the bill around here, then maybe you could run with this long term. I'm not sure that's necessarily the case. And, because Rachel obviously has an important position of her own that at the end of the day she's going to probably have to do. I know she's really, really well respected in the athletics community. Like I said, she does a lot for the student athletes. So I think that this is the right hire for an interim basis thing because she can still kind of do both of her jobs. She's on the search committee to find the new AD. It'll be a really unique, I think, next 2-3 weeks to where, you're going to get to see kind of what she can do, but at the same time, you're also going to get to start hearing some names pop up, bounce around. And that it's kind of exciting to think about where this program's heading. Michael Alford had a good run. And he's going to get a big job at a Power 5 school now, and time for a change. And, change is always exciting, so it'll be fun to monitor that.
Yeah, absolutely. Rachel Blunt she came over to CMU in 2016 after spending quite a significant amount of time at Southeast Missouri State. She played basketball over there, and then she held a number of different positions within the athletic department after her time as a player was over and done with. And like you said, she's been around CMU for quite some time and kind of has that, kind of like what we were talking about last week, kind of has that understanding of Mount Pleasant, of CMU and the culture around here. So, like you said, even if it's just for an interim basis, great hire. I think she'll do a fine job leading the charge for the athletic program. So, other than that, today's show is going to be a little bit different. It's obviously, yes, there is probably some sort of sports news to talk about, but I wanted to make it a little bit different this week. And this week, we are, and we're going to start to kind of do this a little bit more and more. So let us know if you guys like this or not. But today is the day we're going to pick our 5 favorite moments and games in CMU history, and we're talking all sports, and any sport you can think of. We're going to touch on it. There's a pretty common theme, I think, between at least mine. I have no idea what Christian has written down on his side, and likewise, he doesn't know what I have written down. So with that, Christian, do you have any honorable mentions, or are you starting at 5?
Well, I'm gonna save the honorable mentions for the end in case you don't say them or they're on your list. So
I like it.
I am gonna get right into this, and I'm gonna go inverse. I'm gonna start with my number 1, actually.
Okay, I like it.
I don't want you to take it per se.
Oh man.
My number 1, being a 9-year-old kid actually, no, I wasn't 9 at the time. I was 8 years old. Being an 8-year-old kid in the basement. It's a school night. It's a Monday night right after we got back from Christmas break. The Chippewas are down in Mobile, Alabama. You got Dan Lefevre out there, my hero back in the day, believe it or not. And then you got Antonio Brown.
Hall of
yes,
Famer, Dan Lefevre.
yes, it's exciting. Brian Anderson, Antonio Brown, all those guys. That comeback in the GMAC Bowl in 2010 easily tops the charts. It was awesome to watch, being a 9-year-old kid, being enthralled with that whole program and that team. And that was part of the reason why I kind of decided on CMU. Obviously, in my younger days, I wanted to come here and play quarterback. I don't think that's the case anymore. I just don't have the wing for it. But still, to kind of think about moments like that, especially that game, it's really cool. The whole way they came back in the fourth and Antonio Brown running the kickback. Regardless of what you think about him now, he still played a huge role in that program and that offense. Was a really good player here, so you can't necessarily discount that. But yeah, my number one is the 2010 GMAC Bowl, Central Michigan over Troy.
Funny story in that game. Obviously, it's one of your stories, but your dad it involves that Antonio Brown return for a touchdown. What did your dad tell you? And keep in mind, Christian was really young at this point. So
yeah,
what's that story again?
I was 8 years old. The Chippewas were down 31-19. And being an 8-year-old kid, Lefevre's a senior, Brown's a junior, but you knew he was leaving. Brian Anderson's a senior. All them guys are seniors. I'm like, Dad, this is over. It's the last time I'm going to get to watch a play, and they're going to lose. I said, Dad, I'm going to bed. And he said, you know what? No, you can go to bed if Antonio Brown doesn't run this kickoff back. If he runs this kickoff back, you got to stay up and you got to watch the rest of the game. If not, you can go to bed. And sure enough, Antonio Brown runs that stinking kickback to the end zone. So we stayed up and we watched the rest of that game, and they won. And it was a really cool bonding moment with my dad. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I am where I am today. It's really, really cool to think about.
Absolutely, man. And your dad's a CMU alum as well, so
yes.
That's kind of that. Really, that bond, man. That's really cool, and that's one of the best games I think in CMU football history.
Yes,
I think according in the media guide from last football season, I think it said it's one of the best games. So do you want to keep going down your list, or do we want to go alternate?
We can go every other.
All right. Okay. Man, I don't know if I want to start with my number 1 or my number 5.
Do what you got to do.
I'm going to go backwards. Okay, so I'm going to go inverse of you. So I'm going to start with my number 5. 1994 CMU football at Bowling Green. The fat punter game, I say in quotation marks. CMU and Bowling Green battling back and forth. Winner takes all, wins the MAC and goes to the Las Vegas Bowl. Intense battle, right? This game, it's back and forth. Bowling Green's up 25-21 in the fourth quarter. And Craig Fisher, known as the fat punter, again in quotation marks, calls his own number and runs a fake punt and runs it 73 yards for a touchdown. CMU wins the game. That it's one of those that it's just so weird. You just don't expect it to happen, but it's one of my favorites. Just how bizarre that it is just to watch it over and over again on YouTube. It's just mind-boggling that he takes off down the field and sprints, brings it home for 6 points.
That's wild.
Yeah, dude,
That's
it's bizarre. And when CMU played at Bowling Green back at last October, I saw that play start to circle around a little bit again, of course, and I just kept laughing at it. I'm like, just come on, man, that shouldn't happen. Shouldn't happen. All right, what's your number 2?
My number 2, we're gonna stay on the football script. We're gonna stay in 2009. And we're going to travel on down the road, down 127, to East Lansing, and talk about Andrew Aguila kicking a field goal through to beat Michigan State. Listening to the Coach Mac podcast when play-by-play broadcaster Adam Jackson interviewed Butch Jones, him and Coach McElwain did. They interviewed Butch Jones, and Butch Jones told that story of his dad having recently passed away before that game, and Butch Jones was carrying around his dad's police badge, and he showed it to Andrew Aguila, and he said, all you got to do is kick it, Dad will take care of the rest. And the funny part about that story is that Aguila missed the first field goal. And now a lot of people talk about that, but the guy jumped off sides from Michigan State, and so there might have been a little divine intervention there. I think that was a super cool comeback for them, at the end, and then playing for the win and not getting it, but obviously recovering the onside kick. And yeah, that's another fascinating game for CMU football, and they had a great run with them guys, Lefevre and Brown and Anderson and all those guys. Just a heck of a run, and I think that Michigan State game was kind of their shining moment, if not for that bowl game.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come back to that game in a little bit. Because of course, I put that one down on my list as well, but a little bit different. Let's see. Keep on working down the list. My number 4, going really recently, you'll kind of see a pattern of some recent events and games. The 2019 CMU baseball team. That team, not only was it really fun to cover that team, because they had a lot of fun, and honestly, they were all really nice guys. But that fun in the dugout, the kind of the shenanigans that we kind of grew accustomed to see, it translated to success on the field, and they were able to go win not only the MAC regular season title, but then the MAC tournament title, and then they went on and won that regional opener against Miami, Florida, and just the amount of success that team had. I know we're kind of thinking about like one game or one moment, but just that whole season.
Yeah.
But the dog pile that they had at Tennyson Stadium, when they won the regular season conference title, that's one of those. I mean, I was there to cover it, and that's kind of one of those moments that kind of sticks out from that season, because I mean they went on, I think, a 22-game winning streak, something along those lines. I can't remember the actual number, but they needed to win all of those games to win the MAC regular season championship, and they pulled it off, and that's one of the, I guess, one of my favorite games that I've covered here at CMU for CM Life. So that that's my number 4. That whole team, but that moment, that dog pile, after they won the MAC regular season championship. That's my number 4.
Yeah, and this isn't on my list, but you mentioning that team made me think about last year. Being a high school kid on a baseball team that was very similar, and that we like to have fun in the dugout and energy. And we also won a lot of games. Sitting there and watching them play Miami of Ohio, and watching David Cole take that fastball off the elbow, going down, and then immediately just getting up, sprinting to first base. All the guys are going nuts. Like, that's why you play the game, man. Like, that stuff's incredible. And it shows that the difference between D1 baseball kids and, junior high or high school kids, the talent gap, obviously, but in terms of just love of the game, general, having fun, there's really not that big of a difference. And I thought that was really cool to see.
Yeah. That game against the Hurricanes. I mean, and it was such a close game. It was such an intense game. And that moment, I think it was in the 7th inning, if I'm not mistaken, just seemed to completely turn the game on its head. Because that was kind of going back to, let's just have a good time. We're here for fun. Like, obviously you're here to win a championship, but it's all fun.
Right.
I think that moment, that was like the key moment in that game. So that's one definitely won't forget. All right, what's your number 3?
Number 3. Let's see here. So I've attended a few games in person in my life. I would have to say the top, my favorite one I ever came to, and this one gets number 3 just because I was there in person. It's Central Michigan, Toledo, and there's the common theme again. It's that same team, that 2009 team. Central Michigan, Toledo. It was either a Wednesday or a Thursday. It was Veterans Day. It was a Thursday night, Maction, ESPN, nationally televised. Central Michigan just beats up on Toledo. Dan Lefevre runs for 4 touchdowns, throws for 2 more. Before last year, it was the last time we had beaten Toledo, or Central Michigan had beat Toledo. And, it was just cool to be there and be a part of it, and the whole atmosphere at Kelly Shorts. So, yeah, that was probably my number 3, just watching them take it to Toledo. Yeah, it was really, really cool.
Yeah, that season, he had obviously mentioned Lefevre's dominance. He's – and like we had mentioned before, Dan Lefevre is a member of the Hall of Fame, CMU Athletics Hall of Fame class of 2020. And he's still on the top of almost all of the offensive records in CMU history and close to the top in Mid-American Conference history. And I believe he still holds holds the record number of career touchdowns, I think with 150 in Division I history. I think I read that right. I think. I don't remember if I read that right or not, but I think. But still, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really follow CMU that closely. I knew that 2009 team was something special, so I kept tabs on it, as best I could. But there were a lot of people calling for Dan Lefevre to make his way to New York that first weekend in December. Yeah, to be a Heisman finalist. Yeah. Quick side question: do you think Lefevre should have been a Heisman finalist that year?
Well, there were a lot of dudes in college football at that time who were incredible. Tim Tebow, Sam Bradford, those kind of guys, Colt McCoy, they deserved all the recognition you got. You can only have so many, and so to exclude somebody from the Power 5 who deserves it in favor of a mid-major kid doesn't always look the best. But I certainly think Dan Lefevre could have played at a high level against any competition that year. He was just a bad guy. It didn't pan out in the NFL for him, but he was. And that's not me speaking as somebody who, worshipped him as a kid, but this is me talking in terms of going back and rewatching some of those games and seeing the things he did. The dude could move, and he also had, a cannon. So he was everything you could ask for out of a quarterback, and it just so happens that kind of that whole spread-oriented, you're not taking snaps under center. It wasn't necessarily a pro-style offense at that time. Had he been running that now in this day and age where the NFL is a little bit more open, I think he might be all right. But it was just a different time, a decade or so ago. And so it didn't work out for him. But he was definitely deserving of any recognition that he got.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, like you said, kind of been able to go back and watch some of games from that 2009 season. Just incredible how he was just – he took command of the offense and said, screw you, defense. We're going to do what we want anyway, and just kind of kick them in the mouth. So that's been fun to watch for sure. All right, my number 3, we're going to really step back the clocks here. 1974, CMU against Delaware for the Division II National Championship. CMU builds an ultimately insurmountable 30 to 8 lead, 30 to 8 lead at halftime. Dick Durham's running game, absolutely dominant, kind of like Lefevre's running game, so to speak. CMU ends up going on to win the game, I think 54-17. To me, looking back at that game, it just kind of solidified that CMU was ready to make that jump to Division I. And I'm not sure exactly how the conversation went, but if it was more, okay, if we win the national championship, we're going to go to Division I. or we're going to go to Division I no matter what happens. Either way, I mean, it's either, okay, here we have a little bit of credibility. We just stomped everybody. We just stomped Delaware in the national championship game. We're ready for Division I. Or, hey, look what we just did. Like, okay, that justifies, yeah, we're going to Division I. So, and it's the only national championship CMU has won in football. So, kind of a big deal if you ask me. So that obviously I wasn't around to see that, but I've been able to go back and watch some YouTube videos on it and watch the game, and it was a fun game for sure. All right, so you're working backwards. So is this your
4.
number 3? You're
4.
Number 4. Okay.
Yeah, so we're switching gears now. We're going to McGurk Arena, and we're going to talk a little bit about Marcus Keene and the boys over there. Him and, he got a lot of the credit that year, but Braylon Rayson was also good in his own right too.
True.
Braylon could really shoot it. Keene could really shoot it. They didn't play a whole hell of a lot of defense, but they played some pretty darn good offense. And a lot of times, in any conference other than the MAC, it can be tough for teams to keep up with that. Obviously, you look back at the record of that team, and you see they were 500. So it wasn't great, but you had a couple of great scores in Keene and Rayson, and I think that was kind of exemplified, in that game against Miami. I'd have to look up the exact dates, but it was Miami of Ohio, and I know Keene had 50 points that game, and he was pulling up from everywhere, the logo. Watching that game on ESPN3, it's just like, holy cow, let's kick the ball. And I remember they were talking on College Game Day before the game, and they were talking about, like, mid-major guys that can really score. And Jay Willis was like, you need to watch out for Marcus Keene. And sure enough, he goes out and scores 50. And so I think that was kind of incredible. Kind of put CMU on the map for a year, and then Keene jumps to the NBA. And Grayson does his thing in his own right, but, just they couldn't put it all together. But for a couple of, Saturday afternoons in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, they were the show. And I think that's something really cool. It could be explored a little later on.
Yeah, and I too. I remember that episode of College Game Day. I don't remember where they were. I think they were probably at Kansas or something. But I remember distinctly Jay Billis saying something about Marcus Keene and just how dominant he was scoring the basketball. I honestly, and I don't know if it's on your list, so sorry if it is, but I thought for sure you were going to talk about the Western game when Keene scored a ton of points. I think 51 points or something like that. Hit the game winner for the bench. It's a buzzer beater 3 to beat Western, and I mean he scored more than half of CMU's points.
Well, and the other one was when Antonio Brown came back. That was another one that I thought I might have to pull out for my list, but it's not going to be on it. But when Antonio Brown came back when they played Ball State, and I think both Keene and Rayson went for 40 that game, and they lost it. They lost in overtime. They did lose, but 2 guys combined for 80 points. So that's pretty incredible. Well, there's a couple of layers of incredible there. Yeah, 40 points each out of 2 guys, but they lost. Yeah.
Oh my God, that kind of just spells out that entire season, how that went. That's remarkable. Oh man. All right. On to number 2. My number 2 now. We're actually going to keep it in basketball, but it's not at McGurk Arena. The 2018 NCAA Tournament featured a team from Mount Pleasant, Michigan, in the CMU Chippewas that a lot of people expected. A lot of people that maybe didn't necessarily know too much about the game expected just to bounce out in the first round and say, see you later. No, that team ended up making it all the way to the Sweet 16 after beating 2 nationally ranked teams in LSU and Ohio State in its home arena. I remember watching the LSU game. I was actually up here visiting some friends. I wasn't a student. Well, I wasn't a student yet in either respect. But I remember coming up here and watching that game, the LSU game, and just kind of, at first I was just I'll be honest. I was one of those guys at first, like, oh, you guys care about the women's team. Like, I didn't know much about the women's team before I came up here and saw how into it they were. Team won. Okay, sweet. Let's watch the second round game. And I mean, then they took it to Ohio State in that game too. It wasn't really. I don't think it was that. Watching the game and trying to remember the game a little bit, I don't remember it being really all that close on the floor. Maybe on the scoreboard it was, but CMU was in control of that game pretty much the entire way. I felt like, and I just remember kind of like like my jaw dropped when that game was done, and I was just so surprised that CMU was able to make it to the Sweet 16. Mainly, I was just happy that Ohio State lost because, being from Michigan, I actually didn't grow up a Michigan fan, but, I always love seeing Ohio State lose, in a non-journalistic perspective. So I think that entire team, but that moment when the buzzer sounds in that round of 32 game, that's, I think, my second favorite moment in CMU sports history.
Yeah, and they kind of ran into a buzzsaw with Oregon in that Sweet 16. You're talking about shout out Andrew Loveland. He is like the biggest Sabrina Ionescu fan I've ever met in my life. Which, I mean, she's got skills, and she was a freshman at that time and nearly dropped a triple-double against the Chippewas.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an interesting storyline. Like, I didn't realize that when they played, but yeah. Ran into a buzzsaw, but again, a really good team. Really, really good team there. It was cool to see all that play out. Yeah.
It was just a lot of fun, and the Chippewas are going to the Sweet 16, and then they interviewed Sue Guevara on the floor, and just how that all transpired was just it was fantastic. It's one of those that'll stick with me for a long time. All right. Number 5, Christian Boer.
Yeah, so my number 5, we're going to keep it in hoops. We're going to keep it in hoops. And, I didn't really know a ton about the 15 team. The team that went to the MAC championship in the MAC tournament final, ended up losing. But the game before that, they played Toledo, and they put on one heck of a show. I mean, Chris Fowler is out there playing, and it was the first time I had really seen Central Michigan on national television. And so you had Chris Fowler, who was a senior. You had John Simons, a three-point shooter, who's a Cadillac native, which is by where I'm from. So that was really, really cool to see. And then you had guys like Josh Kaczynski, who was a shooter. And then, I mentioned Rayson, who was a freshman at the time, another kid that could just light it up. So that was a really fun team to watch. And then the next year was the Keene year. And it just makes you think, if Keene would have been with that team, had he not been redshirting that season because of the transfer rules, what could that team have been? You make it to the MAC title game without him. What could you have been? So I guess my number 5 is just that entire squad and all the things they were able to do with the MAC West Championship, and then making it all the way to the MAC tournament final, and then ended their year in the NIT. So it was just kind of cool to see him get that national recognition.
Yeah, for sure. I'll be honest, I'm right there with you. I didn't really know much about the 2015 team, but then you're able to see him on national TV, and that kind of one of those neat moments, kind of looking back on it. That team's pretty good too. Obviously, like you said, made it to the tournament final, ended up losing, but that's that it. From what I can kind of recall and gather from other people, that it was kind of an exciting team, exciting time on campus too, to follow along with that team. For sure.
Let's hear that number 1.
Number 1, well, you already stole it. So, I don't know if you saw me go, like, kind of roll my eyes when you're talking about the CMU MSU game in 2009. I figured that was going to be on your list.
Yeah.
But that's still my number 1. But what kind of sticks out to me, obviously, you had talked about the kick. just to kind of change it up a little bit, just the whole sequence with the late touchdown, the onside kick recovery, and then the long field goal, the miss, and then the, I guess the, as you said, the divine intervention to get another chance, and then drills it, and CMU goes on to win. Yeah, I mean, and you said it before, but it was kind of like that cornerstone moment of that entire season, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it go on to win the MAC championship and the GMAC Bowl, but that Michigan State game, I think, because that Michigan State game, like I said, it was the cornerstone. It was a much needed win, really, for the season, and CMU ends up losing that game. I think you turn around and say, man, that's ended up being a 3-loss team at that point, and then is that 2009 team still as great as it was? Maybe, but you have that confidence, coming in after beating Michigan State on the road for the third time in history. You kind of take that confidence and use it in the conference season. So Michigan State wins that game. Do we still see that same 2009 team with the magic that it was? I don't know, and I don't think so. But I think that. And the funny thing about that is, as I was a diehard Michigan State fan when I was a kid.
Yikes!
Big yikes! And I remember that game very distinctly. I was so upset because Central Michigan had upset Michigan State. I was so angry. Like, I didn't even watch the game, but I saw it on the highlights, and just watching that kick go through, I was like, "Are you kidding me right now?" But at the end of the day, kind of looking back on it, like, good. I mean, I'm glad Michigan State lost that game.
Me too.
Yeah, well, obviously, yeah. But no, that like, man, I wish I would have been rooting for Central Michigan that day. Not only because that Chippewas won that game, but like the underdog. Like, you got to love the underdog.
Oh yeah.
And looking back on it, it just makes me happy to see Michigan State lose. I'll be completely honest with you in that right. All right. You said you have some honorable mentions.
Yeah, I got a couple. Just some stuff from this past year, my first opportunity to kind of cover the team.
All right, let's hear it.
Unbiased perspective. You're talking about things that are just cool experiences. Central Michigan beating Toledo for the MAC West title. It was just really cool experience. The game was on Black Friday, so there weren't a ton of students there, but just the atmosphere, the players excited. You go down on the field after the game and everybody's going crazy. Like, those are just things you don't forget. It's cool to experience all that stuff. And then on the basketball side of things, when they beat up on Bowling Green, on a Tuesday night in February, and Dallas Morgan goes for 29 or whatever he went for, and David DeLeo ties the all-time record by hitting 6 3-pointers to leave him tied with his former teammate Josh Kozinski, who I talked about a little bit earlier, in the record books as the MAC's all-time leader. So those two moments from this year really just stand out to me and make me realize just how special of a year it was shaping up to be for Central Michigan athletics. And it's a bummer that we didn't get to see the women's team in the NCAA tournament, or the baseball team even really play. Or the softball team, and the track team, and gymnastics, which has always been a solid program here. So it just kind of makes me think about what could have been, in the spring and in the late winter sports too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually one of my honorable mentions as well. So it's just the whole turnaround that football team had. And like you said, it kind of set the tone for what was really a pretty special year for CMU athletics. I mean, the men's basketball team, pretty okay showing the non-conference season, a little bit of a struggle in the back half of the year. But the women's team, I mean, just the dominance that team showed. I mean, yeah, they had a couple of close games, but they were able to win those close games. And wrestling had a strong season. It, okay, moderately strong season. Gymnastics was going along well under Christine McDonald for the first season of her head coaching tenure. But yeah, just kind of lose out on the spring sports and what could have been. That it's disappointing to say the least. Did you have any others, or was that kind of the?
That pretty much wraps her up for me, man.
All right. Well, I do have a couple. Of honorable mentions. I don't think we can talk about great CMU moments and games without mentioning the 2016 game against Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
The Hail Mary. Yeah. The Hail Mary that should have never happened, but it did, and CMU executed perfectly to go in there and upset Oklahoma State. That was another one that I was actually, where was I? No, I was in home. I was in West Michigan. I was actually getting ready to head down to Florida to go watch a game down in Gainesville, and I remember Florida was playing Kentucky that day. And I mean, the Florida-Kentucky game was long over because I mean, Kentucky just not very good. But I remember seeing the end of the game again on a studio update, and again my jaw just hit the floor. There's no way CMU should have won that game. Rules experts will tell you the same exact thing, but again, CMU was able just to execute and go out and take care of business. So that's my top honorable mention on my list. My next honorable mention actually also involves Corey Willis. He obviously was the guy that scored the touchdown against Oklahoma State. The 2017 game against Western at Waldo Stadium. I was here in Mount Pleasant watching that game on, I think, ESPN2. I think it was a Wednesday night, November 1st, day after Halloween, and CMU was down in that game. Looked like that game another one that CMU should just not have been able to come back and win. But they scored, I think, 21 unanswered points in the fourth quarter, capped off by Corey Willis, scoring, I think, I don't remember the exact yardage, but I think it was a 77-yard touchdown pass from Shane Morris. And just watching the highlights of that game, kind of going back and seeing Corey Willis just streak down the middle of the field. I mean, there was no one around him. Wearing Derek Nash's 21 jersey. I mean, that was Derek Nash was Corey Willis's best friend. So watching Willis score the game-winning touchdown to beat Western, wearing his best friend's jersey, that's just one of those, I guess, uplifting moments that you don't really think about it in that moment, but then you realize, oh, he was wearing 21. How special is that? So just that whole game and that moment of that touchdown with Willis wearing 21, a lot of CMU fans, I think, can recognize how important that is and how special that is, especially for a guy like Corey Willis. My last honorable mention, going back to hoops, just kind of one of those obscure things, but the 2003 men's basketball team, felt like it was right to put this team in there. This is the last time CMU has won the MAC tournament and made the Ncaa tournament. Beat Creighton in the first round, met up with Duke in the second round. We won't talk about the Duke game. So not only, is it CMU playing in the Ncaa tournament and winning the first round game, but actually the late, great Dick Enberg was on the call for that game for CBS Sports. So that's kind of one of those things that, again, you don't really think about it when it's happening, but when you have a guy like Dick Enberg calling a CMU men's basketball game in the Ncaa tournament, that's pretty special. And especially the fact that they won that first round game because he was on the call for that game too. One of those cool moments that you just kind of think about it and you're like, hey, that is pretty cool. But yeah, that's, like I said, a little obscure, a little bit different, but, felt like it was right to at least mention that game.
Yeah. On the topic of Hail Marys, we didn't mention the Bahamas Bowl one.
Oh.
Which I would argue, I'm going to be honest with you, I kind of forgot about it. Just because it's one of those things that kind of gets pushed under the rug. It was a bowl game. It was Christmas Eve. You're thinking about that, and the one guy that comes to mind is Titus Davis, who's obviously, if you haven't heard, Titus Davis is going through some pretty tough stuff right now with the rare form of kidney cancer that he is diagnosed in. And, not to get too somber, but Titus obviously leads this program, Central Michigan's program, in just about every receiving category. He's a heck of a dude. You talk to his teammates, and they all love Titus. And, you've seen some guys on social media kind of rally around him, and that's always good to see. So, you can't really mention that play without talking about Titus. And certainly, I think I speak for both of us, we're praying, journalistic duties aside, it's a human being we're talking about, and the prayers will always be with Titus, and hopefully he's able to fight this thing, and, that play will forever live on, that him stretching for the end zone. You've got 3 or 4 different laterals in there. Cooper Rush is just throwing his shoulder out, trying to get the ball down the field, because they had to go 75 yards, and they did it. So that was pretty incredible. And it just makes you think about some of the luck that this program has had. It's just insane.
Yeah, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, I guess. But no, that play, I think it really, I think that, and I think you touched on 2 of the 3 reasons that it gets swept on, kind of forgotten about. It was the Bahamas Bowl. Not many people watch the Bahamas Bowl, honestly. Right. Obviously, CMU was in it, but it was on Christmas Eve, so it kind of stinks. But so A, the Bahamas Bowl. B, it was a very lightly attended game. And the third thing I think really is because CMU ended up losing the game.
Yes.
They ended up right call. Go for it. Go for the win.
Oh yeah.
You just scored a 75-yard touchdown with throwing 7 or 8 laterals. Go for it. Just go.
Absolutely play for the win there.
Absolutely. And you know what? You didn't win, but you know what?
And not to mention they were down by, what was it, 42-14 at the start of the fourth quarter?
They were down huge again and came back.
Incredible comeback.
Had no business being even remotely close in that football game, and they were able to hold Western Kentucky, I think, to the 3 points in the fourth quarter.
So much had to go right at the end of that game because they scored to make it 49-42, and then they didn't get the onside kick, and they didn't have any timeouts. So they got the ball back with 1 second left. If that ball bounces on the 1 and doesn't go into the end zone, that clock runs out and the game is over. But because the ball bounced into the end zone and they got a second, they went down and scored. That's just one of the most spectacular things you can ever. You can't draw that stuff up.
No, that's just chuck it downfield and hope. I guess just chuck it and hope for it. That's all you can do.
Shout out Jesse Kroll. He caught the pass in the Bahamas Bowl and he caught the pass in the Oklahoma State game. So his lateral game is second to none.
Absolutely. He's you need a lateral in a pressure packed situation like that. He's your guy for sure.
Well, because he's going to catch it first of all.
Exactly.
That's half the battle.
Exactly. He's going to make the catch and then he's gonna shovel it to whoever needs it. And he's your guy for that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like you said, thinking about Titus, obviously, if by chance you're listening to this, Titus, we're hoping for you, we're praying for you, hoping that you're able to make a full recovery and
for sure.
Be healthy and happy. Well, I think that just about does it. Christian, you got anything else before we wrap up?
No, sir. I think we covered all the bases.
Sweet. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in and watching here on YouTube or wherever you find your podcasts. obviously there's not gonna be a whole lot of sports talk for us to go over. So if you have any fun ideas, any lists that you'd like us to make, kind of like today, if you enjoyed this episode, let us know. You can always shoot us an email at sports@cm-life.com. Excuse me, sports@cm-life.com. You can always reach out to us on Twitter at CM Life Sports. Both Christian and I are really easy to find on CM Life Sports if you can find that. And as always, follow along with us at Central Michigan Life on Facebook and cm-life.com for not only for all of your Chippewa sports coverage, but for all of the coverage at CMU as we battle through what is going to be the weirdest semester we've ever seen. But I think that just about does it. So for Christian and our wonderful multimedia / podcast editor, Ben Ackley, for a job well done once again, I'm Austin Chastain. We'll talk to you guys again when we meet again.